Yo guys, what's up and welcome to another tutorial. Today I'm going to show you all how Southside, ATL, Jacob and Wheezy are making crazy samples and beats in the style of Future and Drake. So first I'm going to show you all the sample, then I'm going to break it down and show you all how I mixed it. And after that I'm going to show you all how I made a crazy beat to the sample. So make sure to stay till the end, I'm going to show you all how I mixed the beat as well. And the winners of the all kit bundle from the last video will be on the screen right now. Please make sure to DM me on Instagram so I can send you the all kit bundle. Y'all please make sure to leave a like and a comment on what y'all want to see next. Make sure to subscribe and to turn on the post notifications so you will see when I upload a video and when I go live on YouTube. And thank y'all for this crazy support. And yeah guys, let's go. So the first thing I did was opening Analog Lab 5 and picked this In Motion Bells preset from the Haze Unknown Pass bank, and I laid down this pattern, which is actually pretty simple and repetitive. I just played with the velocities, played a bit with the strum of these different bell notes, and the finished bell pattern is sounding like this. And for the effects on this bell, I used Portal with the cat preset. Then I had RC20 just for the wobble, just to make it sound more vintage. Then I had this Fruity Delay 3 where I tweaked the level and the wet. Then this Valhalla Vintage Verb where I tweaked the mix and the decay. Then this Fruity Parametric EQ where I just cut out some of the lows and some of the frequencies I didn't like. And I had this Soothe just to get rid of all the unnecessary and unwanted frequencies. Then for the next thing I had Analog Lab again with the Sobriety preset from the Loophole 2 bank. And I laid down this pretty simple pattern. As y'all can see, it's actually pretty simple. I didn't play with the velocities, I just left it how it was. It's basically just there to give it some texture and some background ambience. This is how the pattern is sounding like. And for the effects on this bell, I had Portal with the Fountain preset from this bank. Then I had this EQ just to cut out some of the lows, and I put it 31% in stereo. Then for the next thing I had this reverse brass from the Bass 1 and Pilgrim One-Shot kit. And I laid down this pretty simple pattern. I played with the velocities, but I only played with the velocities over here and then just copied it. So it's a pretty repetitive pattern, but it sounds pretty good in the overall sample. And what I did was rendering out the brass and pitching it up by 1 octave and reversing it. And both of these patterns together are sounding like this. And for the effects on this brass, I had this RC20 where I only had on the wobble and the EQ. Then I had this Valhalla Vintage Verb where I tweaked the mix and the decay. And I had this EQ just to duck it more into the background to cut out some of the lows and some of the highs. Just that it gives the sample some more texture. And I put it 27% in stereo. Then for the next thing I had this brass which is called Break. And I just normalized it because it was a bit quiet. And I laid down this pretty simple pattern. It's repetitive as well. And I just copied the pattern over here and pitched it up 1 octave just that it's not like that repetitive. And I played with the velocities, and this pattern is also just there to give it some background ambience and some texture. And the finished brass pattern is sounding like this. And for the effects on this brass, I had this RC20 just for the wobble and the EQ again. This Valhalla Vintage Verb where I tweaked the mix and the decay. And this EQ where I took out a lot of the lows and a lot of the highs, as I said, just to duck it more into the background. And I put it 27% in stereo. Then for the next thing, which is a lead type of melody, I used this Jubal flute, which is pretty well known in the whole producer community. It's from Ambertone. And I laid down this pretty simple pattern. It was repetitive as well, but I switched up some of these notes, just that it sounds more unique and not that repetitive. And I randomized the velocities, and the finished flute pattern is sounding like this. And for the effects on this flute, I just had this RC20 just for the wobble. Then I had this Valhalla Vintage Verb where I tweaked the mix and the decay. Then this Fruity Parametric EQ where I took out some of the lows and boosted the highs. And I had a Soothe, which is basically just an automatic EQ. And then for the bass, I had this bass which is named Ferno, which is actually boy, if you don't. Then for the last thing, for the sample, which is the bass, I used this bass which is named Ferno, and it's perfect for these type of samples. And I laid down this pretty simple bass line. It's just the root notes and then like a little melody, I guess, with the bass, just to make it not that repetitive. And I copied the bass pattern over, and this is how the finished bass is sounding like. And then for the effects on the bass, I just set a simple EQ where I took out some of the muddy lows and I turned it fully in mono. Then after that I rendered the sample out, normalized it, put the declicking mode on generic, put the mode on stretch, and for the master I just set the sound shift to pitch stereo from waves and I transposed it by -2 semitones, and this is how the finished sample is sounding like. So now I just open up the FOP for the beat, and the first thing I did was pitching the sample up by 2, and then after that I laid down this pretty complex hi-hat pattern, and I will let you decide if it sounds good or not, and this is the finished hi-hat pattern. And then for the mix on these hi-hats, I just set this simple EQ where I cut out some of the lows and I turn it down by 8, and that's basically the whole mix for the hi-hats. Then for the next thing I had this clap pattern, which is basically just a basic clap pattern, but I added some switch ups I guess, right here and there, and this is how the finished clap pattern and the hi-hats are sounding like. And for the mix on the clap, I just had this simple EQ again, where I took out some of the lows. And remember, if you have some good drum sounds, you barely have to EQ anything or mix anything, you just have to level these sounds. And if y'all want an in-depth mixing and mastering tutorial for beginners for beats and samples, make sure to comment that and to leave a like on the video. Then for the next thing I had this Jacob snare from my stash kit, and I laid down a pretty simple pattern. It's just this normal snare pattern I guess, and then some rolls at the end, and this is how the finished snare pattern is sounding like. And for the mixing of the snare, I just had this EQ again and I panned it a bit to the right. Then for the next thing we had the short openhat from my stash kit again, and it's basically just a standard pattern. It's always on the 1, 3, 5 and 7, and the openhat pattern is sounding like this. Then I had this slide openhat, which is basically just a reversed openhat, and I put it right before the clap, so it gives the clap more power I guess, and I just copied it, and this is how the reversed openhat pattern is sounding like. And then for the 808, I just used a simple spins 808. I just turned the out knob to about 50% and the boost knob to 13%. And it's a pretty simple 808 pattern just with a few rolls at the end. And the finished 808 pattern with the full beat is sounding like this. And then for the very last thing, make sure to put rises, FXs and drum fills in your beats. It will make them sound more interesting. I will give you an example. I will let the beat play with and without the rises and FXs. This is without. Which sounds pretty okay I guess, but with rises and FXs you can give the beat way more power, which you will hear right now because this is with rises and drum fills. So yeah guys, if y'all enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a thumbs up and to subscribe to my channel. Make sure to comment what y'all want to see next, and if y'all want to see an in-depth mixing and mastering tutorial for beats and samples. And thank y'all for this crazy support in the last few months. And yeah guys, see y'all.